Kylie Ivanir is a registered dietitian with 8 years of experience who specializes in gut health. Kylie is joining us today on this podcast to talk about gut health, how gut affects our health, signs and symptoms to watch out for, and ways to improve your gut health naturally. Hello, thank you for listening to Thyroid Hair Loss Connection podcast, a science-based, honest, candid conversation about how your thyroid affects your hair. You will learn practical solutions to hair growth, healing your thyroid, and balancing hormones with holistic nutrition approach and the latest treatments. Your hosts, me, Nataliia Sanzo, a registered dietitian, aka Nashville thyroid expert, and Kimberly Vaughn, a board-certified trichologist, hair loss specialist, and coach. To stay up to date on the latest topics, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We also cannot do this without you. Send us a question to the link below and tune in each week for the answers. Now, let's head to the show.
You are in store for an amazing episode today. We have the founder of Within Nutrition, a registered dietitian. Kylie received her bachelor's degree in physiological sciences at UCLA and her master's degree in human nutrition from Columbia University. Oh my gosh, my head's spinning. She is too darn smart. She also runs a private practice, as I mentioned, Within Nutrition. She treats patients and clients worldwide. Her areas of expertise are gut health, hormones, autoimmune, fertility, and a healthy fat loss system. We're excited. Hope you are too.
Kylie, thank you so much for joining on our podcast, Thyroid Hair Loss Connection. We're so excited to have you here, and we cannot wait for you to share your knowledge with our listeners, because we'll talk about gut health, how the connection between gut health and thyroid. And the most exciting part is I cannot wait to hear about approaches and natural solutions, how we can improve our gut health naturally. But before we get started, please tell our listeners, how did you become a gut health dietitian?
Yes, so that is a good question, because I feel like it was kind of an evolution from knowing literally nothing about the gut and till today of obsessing over the gut every day and learning more and more every day. But interestingly, I didn't hear anything about the gut throughout my studies, like undergrad, nothing, grad school, nothing. Even during my internship, I heard a little bit, but not too much. And then I did one of my rotations with a gastro dietitian in New York. And she calls herself, and she's kind of known as like the bloating whisperer. And people would come through her office just feeling bloated, and she would be a detective and just figure out like why the bloating was happening. And I realized there are so many things about the gut I didn't realize. I didn't realize that bloating happened because of, things like IBS, things like acid reflux, like so many things that I didn't know about the gut. And, she'd be this detective. She'd send people the plan, and they would come back and just their life was transformed. Like they would feel better at work and their relationships and just life. And at that point, I definitely knew I wanted to go down that route, but I still only thought about the gut as just the gut, like bloating and those kind of things. Like I didn't connect it to anything else. And then I was at a holiday party in New York, and I was telling somebody, we were talking about almond milk, and I told them to switch out their almond milk for a different brand or something like that. And a doctor in the room heard that, and he came up, started talking to me, and we started talking about the gut. And he turns out that he had just started a company called Micro Friends, about pretty much all of the microbes and all the microbiome, which for all the listeners is just, trillions of microbes in your gut that end up controlling your pretty much entire body. Fast forward a year later, we, had a bunch of calls about, this company, Micro Friends, and he always said that he was a cardiologist, and he always said that he can tell more about someone's heart by listening to them and learning about their lifestyle than from an EKG. And same from the gut. He can tell more about somebody's gut by listening to their lifestyle than, anything else. And from that point, I kind of realized how much lifestyle affects the gut and how much gut affects your entire life. So yeah, I went from kind of being completely clueless to realizing how cool the gut was, and then to realizing like, wow, the gut controls everything in our body and how we feel and how we function. So yeah, that was kind of my evolution in the gut health world.
Yeah, you have such a unique and beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And, yes, are those microbes, and you said trillions, there are actually 10 trillions of them. And now to put that in perspective, we only have 1 trillion of cells, and we have 10 trillions of those microbes. And I think research says that on average, average built person has 2 to 6 pounds of those microbes in our gut. Of course, they're going to control our mood, right? Just our metabolism, of course, our immune system. And speaking of immune system, as you know, I work with people with Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroid disease. And because it's an autoimmune, it's not just the thyroid disease, it's autoimmune disease. To treat it, we have to address our immune system, right? And we know that about 70% of our immune system resides in our gut. So it just makes sense, or it made sense for me to invite you on this podcast, because I think not only your audience and our listeners will benefit from it, just anybody will benefit from healing the gut naturally. It doesn't matter what condition you have. So
absolutely. Yeah, it's connected to everything. And like you said, with 70% of the immune system, all the autoimmune conditions, and especially, with your clientele of Hashimoto's, it's such a big part of our health and our recovery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so Kylie, let's talk about, how do we know if something is off with our gut health? Like, what are some signs and symptoms to watch out for?
So there's kind of 2 parts. The first part would be more of like the localized symptoms, which would be, they can manifest very differently for people. It can be bloating, it can be diarrhea, it can be constipation, pain, distension, changes in bowel movements. It can even be upper things like acid reflux, because our whole gut communicates with each other, and the pH between, the top and the bottom part. So even up here. And then there's the systemic part. The gut connects to the rest of the body. So even if people don't feel, local issues in the gut, it can be brain fog, it can be mood issues, it can be skin issues. We're seeing more and more, manifestations in the skin. So yeah, it could be local or systemic.
Absolutely. And Kylie, I thought for a second you were talking about Hashimoto's as well, because all those symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, bloating, and even it goes on to skin issues. All those symptoms are actually symptoms of Hashimoto's. So I always think when a client presents with those symptoms to me, I always ask myself a question: is it a gut issue or is it a Hashimoto's issue? And usually those two go hand in hand.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think kind of the connection there is, which I feel like people are hearing more and more the term of, is leaky gut. And I don't love that term because I feel like now it's overused, and I think everybody has some extent of leaky gut. It's just when it's out of control that's, kind of the connection between the gut and Hashimoto's or autoimmune. I like to think of the gut as kind of a brick wall. And if the bricks are a little bit separated, things are going to seep through. And then your immune system is going to start being overactive. And, that's where we end up with Hashimoto's or any other autoimmune condition.
Absolutely. And there is actually a strong research in the recent years, because this is such a new area of study, right? Research shows that leaky gut, or let's say it's gut permeability, right? Because we hate the term leaky gut. So increased gut permeability can lead to Hashimoto's and vice versa. So if you have Hashimoto's, you have higher chances developing higher gut permeability. And the way we know it is if, like in my practice, I run a stool test. We measure levels of zonulin, which we all have as healthy people, or just every person has that zonulin. Zonulin, it's a chemical that opens up that brick wall that you're talking about, right? Those little bricks. So if we have high levels of zonulin, that means that we have increased gut permeability. And that's exactly what you're talking about. The particles seep through and they go into our lymphatic system and cause full body systemic inflammation, leading to an autoimmune response. So yes, the gut thyroid connection, gut brain connection, it's so strong and it's very well established.
Yeah, and I think I feel like the knowledge is seeping more and more into the public, which is great. So we're looking at the gut as this integral part of healing, and realizing that if people focus on their gut, they can feel so much better.
Absolutely. Kylie, do you think there are any tests that can help us to get to the root cause of our gut-related problems?
So I love this question because I think it's an important one to address, mainly because I believe that the hype is just a little bit ahead of the science. And every company now is coming out with stool testing. And I think they're often misleading for clients because I kind of see the gut as a painting. And when we do a stool test, it's really just looking at one corner of that painting and we just can't see the whole picture. And I really think that the best way to understand the condition of somebody's gut is learning about their lifestyle, listening to their symptoms, their really specific symptoms. So we talked a little bit about, bloating earlier. There's so many different types. So really understanding that person and their lifestyle. And if there are tests I would recommend, there's a test called the GI map. Again, I don't think it tells the whole picture, but it can tell us a little bit. And then there's also a company called Biome, and they do gut testing, and their technology is great. And they look at the bacteria and the viruses, which I love, which is an even bigger part of the picture. But I really think that listening to lifestyle and symptoms is the best way.
Absolutely. I'm 100% agree with you. Your signs and symptoms are more important than any blood test or stool test or hormonal change, a skin test can reveal about what's going on inside of you. And, in my practice, I do use GI map stool test, and I love it, right? It's a great tool to actually literally look inside of your gut. Now, yes, we're checking the GI stool test checks for gut dysbiosis, right? We're looking at the imbalance of good and bad bacteria. But actually, you will know that you have gut dysbiosis without the stool test because you'll have bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, right? But the reason I really like the GI map stool test is because it checks for pathogens, H. pylori, and we know H. pylori infection is a huge trigger for Hashimoto flare-ups. And it's actually, it will cause diarrhea, constipation at the same time, different days, and just thyroid-related problems. So yes, there's place for stool test, but of course we need to realize that there are limitations.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. Yeah. I think that each person is a different world, and, listening to them and their symptoms is going to tell us the most.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about how can we address these common signs and symptoms that our clients present with. So let's talk about natural remedies and foods that can help improve our gut health.
Yes. So this is the best part, because I think the beauty about the gut is just there's so many things that are in our control, not everything, but we can really, really improve our gut. And we're seeing more and more studies coming out showing that it doesn't take that long to change our gut. It's not like, declogging your arteries that can take years. The changes can actually happen quite quickly, which is really fun. So I think we can look at the 3 P's of gut health. So we have the prebiotics, probiotics, and polyphenols. And then we have other, factors like fasting, supplements, nature, things like that. But I think let's talk about prebiotics first, because those are the most important. And they're the most unsexy. So when we hear about gut health solutions, we rarely hear about prebiotics. It's always like, let's jump to probiotics.
Because it's a supplement and it's easy to take, right? The probiotics.
Yep.
Prebiotics, tell us about this. What is it?
Yeah, and that's so true. So prebiotics, the simplest way is fruits, vegetables, legumes, obviously depends on each person and like how they feel, but prebiotics, think about prebiotics as fuel for your good bacteria. So you're going to get prebiotics from like mainly 5 categories. So fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and some whole grains. Obviously with Hashimoto's, that's a whole, world that more about, and, that can be very personalized. But prebiotics are what's going to feed your good bacteria. Some of the most powerful prebiotics are going to be things like leeks and asparagus and especially garlic and onion. So garlic's a huge one. And it's a little bit of a catch-22 because if you do suffer from GI issues, garlic might bother you. So with all prebiotics, the key is to go low and slow. If garlic bothers you, don't eliminate it, but just start with small amounts and then increase as you go. And garlic's just, I think, a magic molecule. Like we see studies showing that garlic, especially when it's crushed before cooking, you crush it, you wait 10 minutes. And then if you eat it, it can break down into like 100 gut healthy molecules in your gut that can decrease inflammation, that can heal your gut lining. And so and you can use it in so many dishes, which is the best part,
Oh my goodness.
And any type of cuisine.
The way you're describing it, I feel like I can smell it. And now I want the garlic, and I want a bowl of soup or chili with garlic in it, if it's a thing.
Yes.
But it's basically, we're talking about non-digestible carbohydrates, right?
Exactly.
I was just going to say that our stomach cannot break those molecules down, but our bacteria, they tear them apart and they feed off of them.
Yes, it's a party for them. And so every time you give them prebiotics, or, another word for prebiotics is just fiber. Prebiotics is just, specifically what they can ferment. But think about every time you eat them, it's like a party for your bacteria. They're so happy.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to keep or to have the variety, because like we said, we have 10 trillions of bacteria. So they all like different things. So if you like broccoli and you're only eating broccoli, you're literally starving the other communities of those bacteria. So when we, as the registered dietitians, we say, eat the rainbow, we don't just say it because it's cute, right? We're like, hey, feed your bacteria.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so happy you brought that up and I missed saying that in the beginning, but that's actually the most important part. And it's even more important to address because when people think of gut health diets, they usually think of eliminating things, but eliminating things is usually just and there's certain things for certain people that will help, eliminating, but typically we want to add more colors in because that's what's going to feed all the bacteria. And it can be even really simple swaps, instead of getting just blueberries, get a mix. Or if you're used to getting red bell peppers, get some yellow and green ones. It can be, instead of getting one type of like legume, you can get a mix. So really those small changes, think about your bacteria as picky eaters. You have to give each one a little bit of everything because some of them might not like kale and broccoli and green beans. So you have to give them a little bit of everything.
Oh, that is so cute, the way you described it. And maybe you're saying it because you have a 9-month-old at home. All about picky.
All about the picky eaters.
All about the picky. Well, let's talk about what other foods. Let's talk about probiotics and what do they do and how can we add them on into our diet?
Yeah. So if we think about prebiotics kind of as the foundation and as the food for the probiotics are going to be the actual good, healthy bacteria. And the best way to get them at first is just from fermented foods. So the two top ones that we have the most research on are going to be kefir and less on sauerkraut, but sauerkraut I personally think is the most powerful. And even if you don't like eating sauerkraut, you can even just take a few tablespoons of the brine and that just the brine has trillions of microbes. So kefir, sauerkraut, yogurt, miso, kimchi. So all those are going to have the probiotics. And then there's also, I think, a time and a place for probiotic supplements. The key with probiotic supplements, though, is just choosing the right ones, because if you're just going to pick a random one off the drugstore shelf, you might as well just go pick up a tub of sauerkraut, because that's going to be better for your gut than, just a random probiotic from CVS or whatever drugstore. So with probiotics, start with the food and then add the probiotic if you feel like you need it.
Absolutely. Those are great points. Supplements, they do have place on our healing journey, but food should come first. And there was actually, I read that 1 gram of sauerkraut has as many probiotics as 3 or 4 pills of those, 20 and 30 billion of probiotic supplements. So eat 5 grams of sauerkraut. That's what I say. Just eat the real food and then supplement with supplements, right? It's
exactly the tip of the pyramid, the cherry on top.
Yes, the cherry on top. Okay.
And one thing, I forgot about the prebiotics that I think can be really helpful is, because we're speaking of supplements, is prebiotic powders, that those can actually be more effective than even probiotic supplements. And those are things like acacia powder or psyllium husk or inulin. So those can be really helpful as well. And acacia, for example, I mix that into my matcha, and it's super easy and you don't taste it, and you get a nice prebiotic boost in the morning.
Oh, I love matcha. And I think listeners should go on your Instagram Within Nutrition and read all about why you should drink matcha every day. I think you have an incredible
session.
Yes. Yes. Well, okay, Kylie, let's talk about the next thing or food we can do or eat to improve our gut health.
Yeah. So the next part is kind of what we were talking about, but so we have the 3 Ps. We talked about prebiotics, probiotics, and polyphenols. Polyphenols, one of the biggest ones is matcha. And there's other things like cinnamon and cacao, but matcha is really the most powerful one. And also herbs and spices. So there's actually a recent study done showing that spices can change your microbiome or your gut over just with the one meal that's full of spices. So spice up your food where you can. Go to Indian food. And matcha is just something that I love because you can drink it every day. It's a nice, I love coffee too, but it's a nice replacement for coffee. And you can kind of get your double dose of polyphenols from the matcha and prebiotics from the acacia powder.
Absolutely. So, great points. And, when you said spice up your life, right? There is actually a book that I love. It's called Spice Up, Live Longer. And there is a study behind it. The people that use the most spices and different spices, they live longer. I mean, that's
okay. Spice Up, Live Longer. I'm going to read about that.
Yes, I love that book. It's
actually, just go wild in the kitchen.
Yeah, it teaches you how to incorporate more spices in your daily life, in your diet. And so I think it would be a great addition or just a resource for our listeners.
Yeah. I love that. And then there's other things, besides the food. So we talked about the 3 Ps, and then there's other things for the gut, like fasting is a big one. And fasting, I don't know if most of your clients are women, but with women, we obviously have to be a little bit more careful. We don't want to necessarily fast for 18 hours every day, but just really sticking to the 12-hour overnight fast. If you finish dinner at 8, try not to eat again till 8 a.m., which is really not that hard. And that, is just healthy overall. And then another one is omega-3s. So omega-3s can be, just because we don't really get them too much in our diet unless we're eating, good quality fish which nowadays are just harder to find. So omega-3s is a good one, like a good quality omega-3. I always say, open up one of the capsules before you take them to make sure that it's actually good, because we don't want to do any harm. And then kind of the final other thing besides some of the other supplements that we can get into is just getting out in nature. We don't realize that that's such a simple one, but getting out to the park and breathing in park air can really affect our microbiome. And that's something that, hopefully if you live next to a park, that's easy. But if not, just trying to get out, during the weekends or when you have a free day, just getting in contact with nature and dirt. And yeah, that's a really simple one, I think, that we can do and a lot of us don't do.
Absolutely. Getting out in nature and exercising. There was actually research done in 2014 that showed that athletes have the most variety of gut bacteria. I mean, that should be one of the strongest
motivators.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Motivators to go out there and exercise, exercise your gut.
Yes. That's such a big one. And I'm so happy you brought that one up, because I think there was a study that came out recently showing that like exercising for just even 3 days, like moderate a week, really improved the gut for 6 weeks, and being sedentary brought it right back to its original and like not so good condition. So it's about finding something that works for you and you love and you can maintain it. So sometimes we listen to podcasts and we get super motivated and we're like, we're going to go to Barry's boot camp 5 days a week. And then we get burnt out and we stop. So, taking this information and being like, what's good for me that I can do and be excited to continue with every day.
Absolutely.
Or not every day, but, a couple times a week.
Oh, no. We should say every day. Because
every day.
Yes. The recommendation is to exercise, to do some kind of activity every day for at least 30 minutes. So let's promote that, right?
Absolutely. And we can, I feel like there's this, we want to obviously be gentle with ourselves, but I think self-love is actually motivating yourself to do these things that are good for your body and are going to show your body love. And sometimes being too gentle with ourselves and saying, no, I don't have to, I can take it easy, can actually, be the opposite of self-love.
Absolutely.
So I think we can all do 30 minutes a day, and we should prioritize it.
Yes. And speaking of self-love, let's talk about how sleep affects our gut, right?
Oof, let me tell you nowadays with a baby. Sleep is such a big one. Oh my gosh. I mean, sleep and stress, I think that those are connected, and I'm not getting much sleep nowadays. And, I feel it on my digestion, and, sleep, if you don't sleep, you don't digest as well. You're more stressed out, and that's just, sleep is the foundation. So I'm so happy that you remember to bring this one up, because we can have the best diet and take all the best supplements. If we're not sleeping well and we're stressed out, nothing's going to go well. All autoimmune flares will be worse. The gut, everything just is worse without sleep. So I think that, like we prioritize exercise or just movement, sleep should be the sacred thing that we don't negotiate on. And one actually thing that has been a lifesaver for me, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called Yoga Nidra.
No.
And you can find it on Spotify. If you search Yoga Nidra on Spotify, you can start with just 10 minutes. You're going to listen to it the first time and you're going to think it's really weird. And you're going to be like, Kylie, what is this? What did you send me to do? But if you stick with it, and not even stick with it, even after a couple of times, it is like the most restorative, rejuvenating thing that you can do for your brain. And so on days where I don't get much sleep, if I do that for 15 minutes, it's as if I got, a half night of sleep or a full night of sleep, because they show like it changes your brain activity. And they show that like an hour of Yoga Nidra is like 4 hours of sleep. So it's that restorative. And so if you're somebody who can't get good sleep for whatever reason, trying to do like 10, 15 minutes or 30 minutes if you can is so, so powerful.
Oh my goodness. That's, you said it so well. And I'm so excited to go and look into it, because this is such a great practical solutions for our listeners who don't get enough sleep.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I barely got sleep today because we're nap training Liam. And so I think this week I got a total of like 6 hours of sleep, and I did it today. And like I go into Yoga Nidra, my brain is just shot. I have cravings. I want sugar. And I do now I do probably like 30 minutes if I have time, or 45 minutes. And I wake up a different person, less cravings. My brain works better. So it's amazing. If you can do it, if you need it, it's a lifesaver, I think.
Man, Kylie, you gave our listeners such a great rundown of essential tools and approaches that they can do today, starting at lunch or whenever they're listening to this podcast, they can do today to improve their gut health and in turn improve their overall well-being. We're so lucky to have you on this podcast. Thank you for carving out a little bit of your time to share your knowledge and expertise with our listeners. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun, and I really hope that it was useful. And like you said, even if it's, this was a lot of information, choose like one thing that you're going to implement at lunch or at dinner, or go take a 15-minute yoga nidra, and one thing at a time.
Absolutely. That should be a takeaway. One thing at the time. Don't feel overwhelmed to start doing, to get on this healthy bandwagon today, with everything. Like you said, one thing at the time. Now, Kylie, we will have your contact information in the podcast notes below so people can find you, reach out to you if they want to become a client, or if they just want to follow you on Instagram. You have such a huge community of followers, and I love the work you do. It's your best, business card. Your Instagram account. So I think you're doing such a great job for your community. And again,
thank you so much. And thank you this was really fun. I think that the gut thyroid connection is such a fun topic. And I think your clients are lucky to have you, talk about these topics and really heal them from such a holistic and root cause way.
Absolutely. Again, Kylie, thank you so much for being on Thyroid Hair Loss Connection podcast. And I'll talk to you later, maybe on Instagram Live.
Yes. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.